Next, I'm going to introduce someone who will take us into our first session, which is actually going to be a joint conversation with Reverend Johnson. But what I want you to know about this person that's not in the brief bio is she is an extraordinary person, extraordinary human, who, when she touches your heart and your soul and makes a request, all you can say is yes, even if you don't want to say it right away. You eventually get around to it. So I want you all to meet Janice Brooks. She's the national chair of the National Congress of Black Women Incorporated and the board of directors and small rural town philanthropist. Janice has over 20 years of experience in public service leadership at the federal and state level. Her expertise spans human resources and labor management, working at organizations like the U.S. Department of Personnel Management and the National Labor Relations Board. Janice is currently focused on revitalizing small rural towns in Mississippi through engagement with municipality leadership and non-for-profits. She serves as the national chair, as I've said, and also was a part of the Harvard Advanced Leadership Program. She is a former director of Mississippi's Department of Human Resources and a former Miss Jackson State University. Janice has received multiple awards for her outstanding commitment to service. Please meet Janice Brooks.
Good morning. Everybody feeling okay this morning? Amen. This is the day that our God has made, and we will rejoice and be blessed in this. I have the distinct privilege of being here today and being in the company of people who really care about doing good. And as most of us, I'm not going to say all of us know, but as most of us know, things don't happen by happenstance. There's always a reason. There's always a greater purpose. There's always a better and bigger design. And I stand here today, and Wendy, I will get through with this. Just like Nicole says, I will not cry. But this is such a divine backdrop to today. I did not know Wendy Lewis, had never heard of a Wendy Lewis. When I saw her picture, still did not know Wendy Lewis. But as divine order would have things, a mutual friend of ours called me one day, it was a Saturday morning, and said, Janice, aren't you from Jackson? I said, you know I'm from Jackson because I'm in Massachusetts now. I said, because every time I'm talking, you all hear me talk about Jackson. And he said, there's someone I'd like for you to meet. She's having a convening in Kansas City. And would you come and talk about Jackson? At that time, the height of the water crisis was going on. And we know we're still dealing with the water crisis here in Jackson and across Mississippi. And let me say, water crises are still going on across this nation, especially in Black and brown communities. But I had the opportunity to talk with Wendy by phone, never having met her. And I will say to you, we Mississippians, as a native Mississippian, I can say this, we can be very polite, very kind, but we may not fully let you into the inner spaces that make us up. When I got on the phone with Wendy Lewis and we started talking about who you are, how do you have a connection with Jackson, there was an instant connection. I felt I knew this lady since birth. It's as if we were sisters in the truest sense of the word. So as Wendy and I talked, she invited me to Kansas. And I said, okay, yay. And it was just a wonderful event, having an opportunity to be in the midst of some people there, and I'm so happy to see some here today that were in Kansas City. People who were coming with a commitment to do something, not just talk about it, but to do something. So I went to Kansas City, I talked about Jackson, a little bit about the water crisis, but about Jackson and about Mississippi at large a little bit. And so Wendy asked the question. You know how they say, be careful what you ask for. But Wendy was inspired because of her heart to ask the question, well, okay, we are allies. What can we do to be an ally? And I asked her, well, would you help Jackson? Would you help us? And I made that request, and I figured that, I said, please keep the word out there. And I just figured, yes, she will do some things. Her folks, her colleagues, her friends, they will do some things. I never thought that this day would happen where AllySHIFT Episode 2 would be held in Jackson, Mississippi. Wendy called me shortly after the Kansas episode. And this is why I say the divine. She said, Janice, I could not rest. I could not sleep. She said, because what you said about Jackson and supporting Jackson, she said, I couldn't get it out of my mind. And so when you have someone who leans in and submits to their divine calling, they're not going to fight it. They're going to embrace it. So she said, you might find this surprising, but we are coming to Jackson for Episode 2. So Wendy, I say thank you. And those of you who are from Jackson, I'm a tough cookie. But I broke down. I'm a tough enough woman to say I cried like a baby when Wendy Lewis said that Episode 2 was coming to Jackson, because I knew this was something that just out of a phone call, we talked and laughed about some things that happened in Jackson growing up, that now we are here today. So I want to go on the record for saying, Wendy Lewis, the AllySHIFT community, and the AllySHIFT family, we cannot say thank you enough for your presence here. Thank you to the students that we have here. When they walked in here, oh my God, they just exuded the presence and the future of who we are. So with that said, Wendy, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. I am so honored that you were obedient to that divine calling. And so thank you again. And I have to say, honored my president and Dr. Hickman Johnson, long time and good seeing you again. So with that, Wendy, thank you again. And now, if it is time, may I introduce this panel. Are there any other comments or anything before we begin the next panel? All right. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to have with us this morning Dr. Hickman M. Johnson. You all had a chance to experience a little bit of Dr. Johnson in his prayer. Yes, he is a pastor, and we thank God for that. But he also serves as the executive director of Mississippi's Regional Housing District 6. Dr. Hickman Morgan Johnson has dedicated his life to serving others. Ordained as a pastor in 1964, he has been the pastor of Farish Street Baptist Church since 1968. He graduated from Tennessee State University with a bachelor's degree in chemistry in 1964. And in 1967, he graduated from Morehouse School of Religion, ITC. Yes, he is a Morehouse man. And he graduated from Morehouse with a Master of Divinity. Dr. Johnson is an accomplished scholar, being the first African American to receive a master's degree from Mississippi College, and being awarded a Doctor of Ministry from Emory University. Dr. Johnson is deeply, and I say deeply because we know Dr. Johnson and have known him for many years. He is deeply devoted to his 5 daughters, 8 grandchildren, and wife of 55 years. He has been the executive director of the Mississippi Regional Housing Authority, Region 6, since 2004. He prioritizes in his role safe and affordable housing for Mississippians. With his vast years of experience and education, Dr. Johnson can adeptly speak to the spectrum of homelessness, housing instability, and home ownership in the 9 counties his agency serves. However, we know that the very issues that Dr. Johnson and the Housing Authority addresses here in Mississippi are actually the same struggles facing our nation relative to homelessness, housing instability, and home ownership. Dr. Johnson, as I welcome you to the podium to speak, afterwards, you and I will then talk and have a little bit of a conversation where I can ask you some questions, and then we allow our audience to ask you some questions. But we are honored to have you here, and thank you for your heart and your head that you have devoted to helping to improve homelessness and housing for all people here within the state of Mississippi. Thank you, sir, and we welcome you.
Let me thank Ms. Brooks, Ms. Lewis for the invitation to come and share this morning with you. Welcome to Jackson. To those of you who are out of town, and if this is your first stop in Mississippi, you made an excellent choice. And that's from a transplant. While I'm a native Tennessean, I think I know more about Mississippi than I do Tennessee. I want to congratulate my friend, Dr. Elaine Hayes Anthony, who is president. I would not dabble in politics of Mississippi's Board of Institutions of Higher Learning, but she would make a great president. That's an aside. When Ms. Brooks called me several months ago, and we chatted, in about 3 or 4 minutes in the conversation, she mentioned her dad, whom I knew some years ago as a fellow minister, and it was great to talk to her. And she has called to make sure I was on task and that I would not forget about this day. Let me say she was more than intentional. She was deliberate, convincing. Most of the time she talked to my secretary, Carol, and Carol would tell me, don't you forget, don't you forget, don't you forget. And so thank you again. Let me tell you just a little bit about the work I do at Mississippi Regional Housing Authority. Mississippi Regional Housing Authority is one of 9 regional housing authorities within the state of Mississippi. And the regional housing authorities across counties, in terms of their service area, they are to be distinguished from municipal housing authorities. We do cooperate, most of the cities in Mississippi are probably under 100,000, and so they don't have capacity. The regional authorities fill that niche. Mississippi Region 6 is responsible for central Mississippi counties. There are 9 central Mississippi counties, including Hinds, contiguous counties, Hinds, Rankin, Madison, Warren, Copiah, Yazoo, Holmes. So it's really a fairly large service area. Our commission is appointed by the boards of supervisors in each county. One member is appointed by the board of supervisors to represent that county on our board of commissions. We have a 9-member board, and they make policy. Mississippi Regional Housing Authority is the 3rd housing authority that I have served as executive director. My involvement in housing began in 1969. I served as pastor of Ferris Street Church and became the first to be appointed to the City of Jackson Housing Commission. And I spent 20 years as a policymaker. Prior to 1969, the City of Jackson did not have any public housing. In fact, there was this weird state law, and you would understand it given the animosity between the federal and state governments. Housing authorities could not contract. They were prohibited by law. They could not contract with the federal government. And therefore, most cities did not have, many cities, particularly like the size of Jackson, did not have a housing authority and did not have public housing. It was in one of those changes in government, changes in administration, when the former mayor said, we don't have slums in Jackson, that the new mayor came in, and one of the first orders of business was to appoint a housing authority board of commissioners. And that was when Jackson got its first public housing. Next slide, please. This is our facility. We're located here in Jackson, just south of I-20. You can see our agency from 20. If you are traveling to the airport, chances are you saw us from the interstate. Okay, next slide. What is our mission? Our mission is the same as that of HUD. We are committed to providing safe, sanitary housing, expanding housing opportunities for persons, be they low income, median income. It's to meet that housing need of individuals, and you can do it. Where are you? Can you see me? Yes. Okay. What I'm going to do, rather than say move to the next one, I'm just going to hold up my hand. How about that? That'll save me. We, as a local agency, perform our job by, one, making housing affordable. The City of Jackson has a housing shortage. There is a shortage of standard housing, affordable housing, housing that meets not only the minimum housing quality standards, but housing which is livable. The Housing Authority makes housing affordable by providing a subsidy to families that qualify. But the second thing that we do is we expand housing opportunities. We achieve that end through the Section 8 Housing Assistance Program that most of us know about, because Section 8 gets a really bad, unfortunately, people hate Section 8. But that's the folk who don't know what Section 8 does. Let me say, Section 8 is really an important program that's meeting the needs of families. And the problem is not Section 8, it's how the program is managed in most instances. So you don't want Section 8 persons living next to you, you then be factor, I don't want them in my neighborhood. But if you're out of doors, if you cannot afford standard housing, if you need that additional support, Section 8 really is a blessing. There are two aspects of the Section 8 program. One is the tenant-based, and the other is project-based. And that's how we provide the assistance to families. One of the often overlooked benefits in the Section 8 program is the role of the private sector. It really is a public-private partnership. The Housing Authority success is that it brings together private property owners, persons who may own one or two houses, to the company that owns 100 houses or apartments. We come together and we're able to provide that supply that's needed. We have roughly 1,800 private land owners who participate in the Section 8 program. And when you get to know the folk who participate, it really is phenomenal. It may be a retired public service worker who owns one house, a teacher who lived in this smaller house when they started in their career. As the family grew, they moved into another house, and they kept that house. And they retired, and this one house would be vacant and offline were it not for the Section 8 program. And so they're able to have a source of income. They provide a family with quality housing. At the same time, they're able to supplement their income. So it really meets the needs of many. Well, that's our tenant base. One of the other important characteristics of the program is its flexibility. You may live in Madison. Madison is the adjoining county from where we are here, because Madison County is also in our service area. Madison County, fair market rents in Madison County may be, for a 3-bedroom, could be $1,200, $1,300. You don't know who your next door neighbor is. And this is good because there's this deconcentration of poverty. You don't have all poor people living together. So you have an apartment where the rent is $2,000, your next door neighbor may be a Section 8 tenant. If you can afford it as in the private marketplace, the Section 8 tenant-based program allows that person who lives next door to you to be able to live there and have quality housing. All of that is determined by what we call the voucher payment standards, or fair market rents. But it allows families to move where if they're not suitable housing in this part of Jackson, but in North Jackson there is, or South Jackson, it's a flexible program. You avoid placing all people of like income in one little pocket. So there's a great deal of flexibility to the program. This gives you a sense of the flow, and it shows you what our responsibility as a housing authority, the landlord's responsibility, and we have to work together. For instance, we will refer a person who qualifies for the subsidy to a landlord. The landlord has the right to reject that person. Landlord can do background checks, can do credit checks, can decide whether or not this person has torn up the property, last property where they were. They can make that decision. Landlords have the responsibility of managing the property, making sure that the rents are paid on time, that the tenant doesn't damage the property. And so you can have an excellent relationship between the landlord, the agency, and it serves the public's good. Next slide. The other part of the Section 8 is what we call project-based. We are awarded so many vouchers, and within that award, we can designate a percentage to be classified as project-based vouchers. And what this means is that these vouchers stay with the property. It allows a property owner, a developer, a landlord to know that if he has 80 units, those 80 units will have, maybe all or some will have project-based vouchers. They will stay with the property. It guarantees the lender that there will be a stream of revenue sufficient to meet the debt service. It's a way that we develop and encourage the development, utilizing low-income housing tax credits or home funds and any other federal source of funding. And so there's this mix of other federal dollars that may be used for construction, while project-based vouchers are used to support the rental income. Over the many years, you can go to the next one, we have used project-based vouchers to create housing opportunities within the city. There is what we call the HAP, the Housing Assistance Payment Contract. Housing Authority enters into a housing assistance payment contract, agrees to pay X number of dollars over certain periods, depending on whether it's a project-based or whether it is a tenant-based. A housing authority administers that. On each month, we will pay landlords a HAP. We pride ourselves, at least I do, that the HAP payment is going to be in their bank account before the third day of each month. That's what, if the federal government provides us funding, we make sure that our HAP payments are transferred to the landlord promptly. In the past, some agencies have had problems with that, and so landlords complain. They complain that their money is not available to them. We will, for any given month, let's say the city of Jacksonville, we will probably spend maybe 60% of our subsidy within the city of Jackson or Hinds County, because it's the largest one. Over the last, what is it? We're in roughly the 6 months of this year. We have spent 13 million, close to 14 million in housing subsidy in the last 6 months of this calendar year. And that's monies which help to support families who cannot afford to pay fair market rents on properties. Let's go to the next one. Now we have certain responsibilities, and we maintain the wait list, and we do referrals and qualifications and annual inspections and renewals. Let's go to the next one. This is, I want you to, and I have some handouts on this one. Let me tell you about what we have done. Mississippi Regional Housing Authority had a portfolio of about 136 units of public housing. These public housing units were built in the, maybe 64, somewhere in that neighborhood. We just concluded a conversion to RAD. We took 136 units of public housing, converted them to project-based vouchers, and added an additional 120 new houses. So we did a substantial rehab, and we did new construction. What you have there is a list of our various properties. These are properties which are owned in whole or in part by the Regional Housing Authority. Let me see the next slide. All right, and I want you to see, this is after we have renovated the various properties. This is what they look like today. This entire project costs us roughly about 51 million. And I have a handout, and I'll give you a handout so that you can see it. You can just run through this. This is one of the properties. The next slide is going to give you another property. And you can go to the next one. And this is after we have renovated them. Next one. Okay. And go on to the next one. And the next one. Okay. And then next one. Now, on this one, I want to stop and talk about this one. Several years ago, perhaps some of you may have heard of Mayor Brown. Mayor Brown was mayor of the city of Chula. She was a Republican. And during her tenure, she received a discretionary grant from HUD. And The city of Chula, the poverty level in Chula is really lower than perhaps most parts of the state. It's in the Delta, though. And she acquired roughly a 10-acre tract of land. Mayor Brown died, but before her death, she had she had some infrastructure. She brought water, sewer, gas line, electric lines, but that was all she could do. And I guess that site remained that way for probably 10 years or more. And in a discussion I had with one of the mayors, he said, I really would like to see us do something with this land. And I said, I tell you what, why don't you deed the land to the housing authority? And the housing authority will build on the land. And he thought it was a good idea. He got the city council to agree, the aldermen to agree, and they did. He left office, and we had a new mayor, and she called me and she says, we need to do something to show that you're going to build. And I said, okay, I tell you what, we will build one house. We will pay for one house. And just so happened that the city had a few dollars, there was a fund that was about to be taken back by HUD because they had not spent it. They only had a short time to spend it. And I said, I tell you what you can do. We qualify. Why don't you give us the grant? We will then take that grant, supplement it, and instead of building one house, we'll build two houses. And so we built two houses, two lovely houses. It's a sign of good faith. But what we have done as a part of our RAD conversion, most of the land, you could not build on it because it was wetland. So we could build on probably about 4 acres. We built 20 townhouses like that on this land that was given to us by the city of Chula. And so 3 bedrooms, I mean, they're lovely homes, and they're all rented out. That's what we were able to do when we work with local government and combine resources. And I wanted you to see that. That's in Chula, Mississippi. If you go to Chula, I mean, if you really want to see a problem in housing, go to Chula, Mississippi. That's in Holmes County, by the way. Okay, the next slide. Now, that's Hickman Heights. They named it after some fella. It's let me tell you about that. That's next door to our office. It used to be the La Quinta Hotel property. Those of you in Jackson and back in the 80s remember seeing the La Quinta Hotel. Hotel went out of business. The property was left vacant. People came in and they stole it of all of its electrical copper and bathtubs and everything else. And every morning I would go to the office. There was this depressed property right next to my office. And I said, you know, I want to do something with that. The city eventually demolished the remnants of the building, but there was this vacant land. The land eventually was forfeited to the state of Mississippi. And I went in and said to the Secretary of State's office, we would like to have this piece of property. And because we are quasi-public, by the way, housing authorities are created by state law, and so we're quasi-public. The land was donated to the housing authority. Then there was another building, there was another property owner on that same strip of land, which was a pest control. The property was sold to somebody else. So we bought the property That meant we had control now of everything along Angle Drive. And it took some years, by the way, but I kept dreaming. And we finally completed it. It's a 100-unit apartment geared primarily to persons. It's not a senior property, but it's geared to persons 55 and above. You see that the drive runs under there, and what is that? Well, that's what I call my sunroom. It's windows on all three sides. It's a lovely place, and I envision people coming in, sitting down, watching the cars drive along the interstate, and who knows what happens in that magic place. But anyway. But that's Hickman Heights. It's a 100-unit. So we were able to add 122 properties to our existing portfolio of 136. The Housing Authority, and I don't have in this presentation, also owns probably about 38 or 40 houses, which were HUD repossessions. It's all across the city. Next slide. Well, that tells you how we work together in terms of project-based. And I want to show you the next one. Developers who received, go on to the next one. So we get to the picture. And keep going. Now, right here. Okay. I want you to see that. Cade Chapel Baptist Church, in cooperation with several developers, received tax credits. They wanted to build a senior property. Again, to make it affordable, they asked us, the Housing Authority, if we would provide project-based funding. As I remember, it's about 82 units, but I think we provide project-based assistance to I think about 60 of those. This is called Cade Courtyard. Our project-based assistance made that possible. You have to be able to have the income sufficient to meet the debt service. Tax credits, only one piece of money, but you've got to have other funding brought together to make this happen. This is in what do they call that neighborhood around Mays Street? But anyway, that's Cade Chapel Courtyard. It's a lovely property. The next one. In the Fondren area, a developer wanted to build apartments. Once again, with tax credits, we can assist developers who want to do new construction as well as substantial rehab. But this is in the Fondren area. Those are three properties: Taylor Court, Downey Court, and Oxford Court. We provide project-based voucher assistance for the tenants who live in that property. And there is, I think, the next one. Oh, yeah. And that one is Wood Creek, which is a property that we did, project-based assistance, tax credits, at Canton. You see the garages? Yeah, lovely. And the next one? Okay, go on. Now, these others, there are a number of those we did with private landlords, property owners, developers, who qualified for either 4% or 9% tax credits. Now, this other group I'm going to show you is what the Housing Authority did itself. And the first one is what we call Kapaya Cove. Now let me tell you about this one. When I came to the Housing Authority, my predecessor had bought 10 acres in Kapaya County. And they had owned the land, again, for a number of years, but they did not develop it. This was one of the first developments that I did as ED. It is 16 units, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, enclosed garages, all of them. And I just happen to have been able to fund this with what we call 901 funding, by the way, which is, it was one in a lifetime. But that's Kapaya Cove. Again, it's project-based, 20 units. No, that one is 16 units, and all of the units are project-based. Let's go to the next one. Now, this is did I use the word interesting a few minutes ago? Let me tell you about this one. You know, I can tell you how God works, by the way. One day, my staff member and I were in Chula, and we had just left the office of the mayor, and I had not been to Chula before, and I said, so let's go to Chula and look at some other things, because we do own some other property in Chula. And we were driving down the street, and I saw these apartments, and there was this chain across the parking lot. And I said, stop. I said, go back. So we drove back, and I looked at it. I said, they're all vacant. And I got my pen, and I wrote the name down. And once I got back to Jackson, I started calling to find out, what is this? And discovered that this was a rural development project funded to a cooperative that had built them with the intent of housing displaced aqua workers. In other words, they were designed for persons who were displaced from the catfish industry. You know, Mississippi farm-raised catfish? But they could not make it work. They could not have a rent structure that would make this project succeed. It had been constructed probably 2 or 3 years before I even happened upon it. And that started a discussion with rural development, with the cooperative, with state government, and finally we were able to get them to deed the property to us. We took it off of their hands. 20 units. We got an $80,000 supplemental grant to repair the damages to the property. And we got approval to attach project-based assistance, and that property has been 100% occupied ever since we acquired it. And I was really proud of that. And then the next one, oh yeah, this is another. Yeah. You think preachers are really good at asking for money and asking for? They're not really. This one is not really. But this is a rural development property in Claiborne County. Had been forfeited to the state, again to the county, had been vacant, depressed, for years. So I go into the county board of supervisors and I say, give us the property. Well, I was going to say, give it to us first. And we can't buy anything. Give it to us and we will improve it. And for the last 6 or 7 months, we have been working on this property. New roofs, you see the color, it was brick and graffiti was red brick and graffiti was everywhere. So new roof, new windows. We tore everything down to the studs, and my guys got rid of the field rats and all of, you can imagine. And right today, we are hanging sheetrock. My plan is that this will be ready for occupancy by early December. We recently submitted an application for Federal Home Loan Bank funding. Hope we get it. Right now, we're funding this with a line of credit that we took out, and so. But it's going to cost us. In the end, we think we budgeted. This is going to cost us $2 million to rehab. But it's going to be 40 units because in Claiborne County, that's going to benefit the residents of Claiborne County. So you can take properties which are depressed, abandoned, blighted, and you can rehab them. The key is finding the financial resources to be able to do it. The next one. Okay, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about. And this is my headache, but this is the greatest challenge I faced. To be honest with you, I thought once I had completed Hickman Heights, I was going to go home and sit down. 2 years ago, we were given the Landmark building. The Landmark building is located at the corner of Capitol Street and Lamar in the city of Jackson. It used to be the headquarters to AT&T or South Central Bell. 7 floors, has an atrium that's open all the way up. I mean, it's a fantastic piece of real estate. It's valued at about $12.1 million. And you say, well, what are you going to do with it? Well, I envision 204 units of workforce housing on floors 2 through 7. On the first floor, retail space, a grocery store. There are roughly about 1,200 families living in the CBC, but it's a food desert. I envision a grocery store, some retail space, a bank, and then the building, the way it's designed, and I have some slides, but I did not put them in this because there is a center part of that building which we have been talking to some people about using as a tech center. But anyway, this is what I call our Landmark Towers apartment and our Landmark Place. I've given myself 2 years. 1 year has already gone. And I need help. I need money. I need money, honey. It's going to. We have estimated the cost of development to be in the neighborhood of $57 million to do everything we want done. But it's at the corner of Capitol and Lamar Street, right in the heart of Jackson. Now, there are some folk who don't want me to do that, okay? They want me to give it to them, tear it down. They don't want folk living on Capitol Street. And that doesn't bother me. Thank you. I think that's my last slide. Tells you a little bit about what we do.